Welcome to the Safety and Risk Success podcast with me, Christian Harris. I'm joined today by Abbi Taylor and her father, Jason Anker, and we speak about their business, their passion, their backstory, and some of the effects of what happened to Jason, which you may well have heard of, but if not, then we'll cover it. But also what effect that had on Abbi as his daughter, and the kind of ripple effects that serious workplace accidents and life-changing injuries can have on people other than the injured party themselves. The guys are up to some really cool stuff and they tell us about that. So do give them a follow, do engage with it on social media. And as always, if you enjoy this episode and you get something from it, give us a like, give us a comment, give us a subscribe, give us a follow, and all of that jazz. It would be very much appreciated. Hope you enjoy the episode. Cheers.
Welcome to the Safety and Risk Success podcast with Christian Harris. We believe that proactive safety and risk management powers business performance. Each week we explore this theme, sharing guests, stories, insights, trends, hints and tips. You can find us on all the major podcasting platforms and video versions are available on YouTube. But for now, let's join the conversation with Christian.
Thank you, Abbi and Jason, for joining me today on the podcast.
Hi. You're welcome.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah, no, it's good. Good to have you on. Because there's three of us, we'll have to I'll semi-direct some questions to one of you or the other, but we'll see how we get on. But we'll try and you guys know each other pretty well, so we should be okay for talking over each other and so on and so forth. So let's start then with the fact that obviously your family history is kind of integral and at the heart of what you guys do. I don't know who wants to take this, but maybe you could just share a bit about the history and what happened for anybody that isn't aware, and then kind of what led to Proud to Be Safe.
Okay, so I had my workplace accident in 1993 when I was just 24 years old, when I fell off the ladder on a construction site, knowingly working unsafe, I will add, end of shift, last job of the day. Chose to ignore my safety instincts. I was very young. I wasn't a roofer by trade. I was helping father-in-law's business at the time. He'd sort of given me a job. There was a recession, marriage problems, doing a job I didn't want to do. And I, again, chose to work unsafely, fell off a ladder, suffering changing spinal injuries, which resulted in me being paralysed from the waist down and spend the rest of life in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
At the time I was married. Abbi was just turned 3. My son Sam, he was come to 1 year old. We was having marriage problems before my accident, and it didn't last. I think there was a bit of contention when she did leave, but in my memory, it was there. I came out of hospital, although she has challenges, but in my memory, she left the day I came out of hospital with the kids, obviously. And then, very typically, didn't know how to cope. Didn't know how to speak up. I was struggling. I'd spent 4 months in a rehabilitation hospital in Sheffield. Came out in a wheelchair to a completely alien world with with no ramps, steps everywhere, and real heavy wheelchair back then. It wasn't like the wheelchairs of today. It was a real cumbersome wheelchair, it weighed a ton, and didn't know how to cope. And I don't think my story is particularly different from anybody else's. That I didn't know how to open up, so I turned to the obvious ones, which was alcohol. Just to numb the pain. Started seeing Abbi. She was a little bit older. So Abbi used to come for a day, and then it ended up with a few months. She'd come for a couple of days during the week, so Monday till sort of Thursday morning. And I'd sort of cope. I found a way. I wouldn't say it was my purpose, but it was a reason for me to get up in the morning, get Abbi sorted, play with her. And on Thursday, she'd come back to her mum's. But I'd go down to the pub and spend the weekend in the pub just getting drunk. And it escalated that I found a way of coping. People talk about opening up. I found a way of coping, and that's at the time was all I could really hope for, a way of coping. That progressed, unfortunately, into me taking drugs as well. I was abusing antidepressants. Then moved on to taking illegal drugs as well, which is mainly ecstasy, other things as well, but mainly ecstasy. So again, I go out on a weekend, get absolutely off my face, basically, as a term probably is, and then just about cope for the rest of the week. And that cycle would just go round and round, resulting in 1995, a completely unintentional overdose. But I would say it cropped up, yesterday being Suicide Awareness Day, that, I never crossed the line to really seriously think about taking my own life. But I know I was making poor, reckless choices.
Yeah.
So my depression didn't push me that far, but I was on the edge of that feeling. I had no self-worth. I felt really down about everything. So my drug taking had really escalated. It just got worse and worse and worse to try and reach that same initial high that I experienced the first time. But unfortunately, it never happened. So my drinking was getting out of control. My drug taking was getting out of control. Then in 1995, a completely unintentional overdose. I had a severe reaction in a nightclub, some rave I was at somewhere. That put me in a coma for 17 days, fighting for my life. At one point, my mum and dad were advised to turn the machine off. I need 24-hour care. And fortunately for me, my dad said no. And then started a slow recovery of rehabilitation from that. It was worse than my original accident.
Yes.
It was a very symptomatic stroke. I couldn't speak properly, couldn't use my left hand side of my body or my left hand side arm. I was in a really bad place. But I knew from that moment I had to do something different. I knew I couldn't carry on like this. So again, I became to be full-time, give out focus, saw Sam as much as I could. Very fortunate to discover disabled water skiing, which can be a hobby that didn't involve a wheelchair. And Abby Sam's childhood was going to, go around to disabled water skiing. So their exposure to this disability and diversity was amazing, because all these people we was meeting was either lost arms or was blind or in a wheelchair. So my kids really grew up with a really diverse sort of friends group, well, my friends group.
Yeah.
But I wasn't coping. I found a way of just getting by.
Yeah.
Look after my kids. Sam came through when I was 8, so I had 2 kids brought by myself. It was in a council flat. It was nice. Mum and Dad helped out, with money, and we had it okay. And I will probably speak out of childhood. It was okay. I did my best to bring my kids up, and that was my whole aim, was make sure they was okay. Inwardly, I was really struggling, and then waited 14 years for my compensation. It finally got settled in 2005. But unfortunately, another 2 years to get my compensation. So it was 14 years after my accident. And again, people's perception is compensation is the end of the story. You hear these horrendous accidents, and all of a sudden the person's got £2 million in the bank. Everyone just thinks that's the end of the story. Well, it's not. Compensation was great. I got some money, but I was in such a poor place that I was making bad choices, going on holidays, drinking too much, splashing money on clothes or whatever, just trying to chase this dream of being happy. And after a drunken holiday in Tenerife, I came back and got a chance meeting with a guy called Dan Terry, who was really well known in the health and safety world. And his vision was that he was running some IOS safety management courses, and he just didn't like the bit where he showed a video, for the accident victim. And his idea was to get a live person to do that little bit. And it was a chance meeting, very, very random. And Dan sort of said, "Look, come and share your story." So I showed a video. I want to do a live story, and that's how it started. And then I was struggling because I'd never spoken before about my accident, never spoken in public before, so I was very, very nervous. It used to cause me loads of sleepless nights. And then it was a weird conversation where I was doing a presentation to a small group of people. One guy was definitely not listening, not interested in the story. And I just told him everything. I used to cut loads out about my story, like, being incontinent, sex, all the things that was embarrassing. I didn't talk about. I was talking about the fall, and that was it. But this guy then just shook my hand and said, "I get it." And in that moment, I thought, well, if I shared my accident story and that could just stop one person going through this, then it was enough at the time to think, I'm going to keep going. And that was in 2008. I was working with Dan. In 2009 is when I first set my first business up, speak about my accident to industry.
Fantastic. Thanks for that, Jason. And obviously, you know, uh, you being the victim, if that's the right word, of the accident, I think everybody would appreciate that it's going to have a huge effect on you. But I was really struck, Abby, when you did a talk that I attended a couple of months ago, and you spoke about how this affected you. So I'd be interested to just for you to share something, a little bit about your perspective and the challenges, that members of family have when something terrible like this happens to one of their loved ones as well.
Yeah, of course. I mean, like Dad said, when I was growing up, I can't remember a time Dad wasn't in a wheelchair. So for me, it was the norm. Didn't really talk about it, didn't actually ever really understand what had happened. And I never felt, like Dad said, we did have a nice life. I did it thanks to my nan and my granddad and my auntie. We didn't really miss out. Like
Mm,
I do, when Dad talks about those things like learning to ride a bike or playing football with my brother, I do get it. And as a parent now, even when I hear Dad say that, I feel like I want to cry because I know
mm,
how I would feel in that situation. So, but for me personally, but I think that the side that I was affected more so as a child was the emotional side because it was obviously was obviously traumatic as a young
mm,
child to go through not living with my mom, not living with my dad in between grandparents and things. I'm visiting dad a lot in hospital, so I know when he talked about the overdose, I can. That's one of the times I can really remember is going to see him a lot in the hospital.
mm.
Um, so yeah, it was more when we got older, and obviously mental health was never spoken about when I was a teenager or when I was younger. It just
No.
wasn't it? And again, being so, I want to say I was naive. Didn't for once ever think dad might be struggling or, do you know what I mean? He was a single parent bringing up to me and my brother in a council flat. And teenage girls are hard work as well. I'm not saying I was an angel, but um, any little thing ended up their arguments and it escalated so badly that I ended up moving out, which is something I never wanted to do. But dad was just so hard to live with. Everything was sort of a battle or an argument each day.
Mhm.
Um, but again, then things did start when dad started to deal with it. So like I was forever thankful to Dan Terry for getting dad on this path because when I first went to watch him talk, well, the first time I think I cried for the whole entire thing
Yeah.
because it is a bit like therapy because and it was the first time I thought, oh my God, this is our life, this is what we went through as a family, this is why that happened, this is why this happened, and yeah, just to actually hear what he had been through and what we had lived was very, yeah, it's hard to hear. And even now, I struggle sometimes when dad, because obviously each time he talks, he shares something different or has the confidence
Yeah.
to share a vulnerable side. So yeah, it's always hard.
Mm,
I mean, I work on myself now as well, so I do always try to focus on the positives, but
yeah.
sometimes it is hard not to be affected on the things that you can't do or things where it is a bit limited, especially around my daughters.
Mm,
Because they're 7 and 3, so especially the younger one, it's the same age as I was when dad had his accident, and it's yeah, very harrowing to think put yourself in that same situation personally, but knowing how dad was affected as a parent and now he's sort of doing it again as a grandparent.
mm.
And so yeah, it can be upsetting, but we try and just focus on the positive. But I share that. Well, you saw I get
Mm.
upset every time I talk about
Yeah.
it,
Mm.
but I do understand the importance of sharing my side as well, even though I
Yeah.
find it quite hard.
Mm.
Um, because I think people might be willing to take the risk for themselves, live with the consequences, whatever that may be. But I don't think they understand that actually in 30 years' time it can be still affecting your life and your family's lives, even
Yeah.
then.
Mm. Yeah, I think people do have this kind of perception of being bulletproof, don't they? Especially if they're doing something that they've done, day after day, week after week, year after year.
Mhm.
Um, you know, um, just because you've been driving without a seatbelt for 20 years doesn't mean that it's the right thing to do, but you may well have been doing it for 20 years and you haven't been hurt. is an analogy that I use. Jason, you mentioned that one person who came up to you and said, yeah, I get it, and that's kind of was really inspiring to you. You've obviously shared your story now with thousands and thousands of people, maybe even thousands of companies, but certainly hundreds of companies. What do you think it is that kind of resonates most with people about your experience? And then what have you seen or what feedback have you had about how that's kind of changed people's behaviors around safety?
Yeah, I mean, you touched on it really. So when I used to share my story, it was all about me, and then I moved on to sort of talk about my family. And when I speak, I showed a clip of my dad crying, and that was it. That was filmed 17 years after my accident, my first film made by Outtakes, fourth Mike film, which is still being used today. And my dad cried. It was the first time I spoke to him. He cried. Now I use that as an example, saying, "Look, this is 17 years. My dad's still affected, and my mum sadly passed away now. But my mum, she really struggled with her mental health, mainly because of what I put them through over the years. And that's what I have to live with. And that's, as I mentioned, that's the part that people suddenly get, because I have a big problem with stats and figures. You just think, unfortunately, 100 and whatever the figure was this year, around 150 people died at work, and so many thousands of people had life-changing accidents. And people look at, that's not quite, it's not a massive number, but you take into consideration each one of those persons had a family, friends, work colleagues, and these people are still affected. The ripples from this accident, as I mentioned, don't go away. And I think that's why I share my story the way I do, and it leads into the family side of it. I even talk about my ex-father-in-law, who was my boss of the company I was working with, how he was affected, how he's still affected today. He has flashbacks and nightmares. He actually watched me fall off a ladder. So when people start to understand that these ripples last forever, it's not our family's still going through, and it's one decision. One decision I made of doing something when I did all the things right. I stopped, I thought about it, I realised it was unsafe, and I still did it. And when I speak and I talk about something, we'll probably move into it. I'm mental health at the time, probably affected my safety choices. Because I think my old presentation used to be try to motivate people to not be like me. So I used to be really quite, people have seen me change, which my story's changed, but back then it was very angry. I talk about leg bags. I get leg bags out, I'd throw them around. Could you imagine having to wear one of these? And it was really, we had people fainting, we had ambulances coming to get people. I think it's about 32 people that actually fainted in the presentations. And I must have about a dozen ambulances come. I used to get, it wasn't, I felt like I'm doing my job properly. This is working. I'm getting through to people. Well, actually, that is short-lived, because if we have a horrible experience, we want to forget about it as fast as we can. It's a human nature. So if we can try to inspire people, and I share my story now, and we'll move into it. I try to inspire people to be like me, to think about the mental health, to all the things I do today around, eating breakfast every morning, exercising, breathing, gratitude, all the well-being things I do, and actually realizing that you can have bad times in your life at home, but you come to work, and surely work should be a nice place to come to. If work's a toxic environment as well, I use my example, and people sort of say, be agreeing that a lot of people say they see themselves as me just before my accident, where they're not, not talking about their problems at home. They come into work, drank too much the night before, they've not slept properly, and they're on building sites, they're in factories. These people are walking around today, not focusing on what they're doing. And the work I do with Tim now, especially, highlights the issues around coming to work in a bad way with narrow vision. You're not concentrating on what you're doing. Are you then more likely, when it comes down to taking a shortcut, are you more likely to say, I'll do it anyway? Or, as we want people to do, is stop and think and do something about it? But surely, if you're in a bad place, doing just enough to do for that day, you're going to be like me, and you're going to say, no, I'm going to do it anyway. You take the shortcut. And think another rule or another piece of safety equipment is that the answer? It is one of the answers, but it can't be the only answer. We have to look deeper why people are choosing to work unsafely. The majority of the time, and it's a new thing, and I know it's can be quite controversial in the safety world, but I really believe that people's well-being, how they feeling, definitely affects their choices of what they do.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Just thinking about myself, sometimes I have super productive days because I'm in the zone and I'm up for it, and other days I, can't be bothered and I am lackadaisical and just, finding distractions. And I'm fortunate that my job isn't involving anything that's kind of high risk as such. So if I take a shortcut by what would be an example? I can't think of an example now. Copy and pasting a document or something, where rather than writing from scratch, that doesn't have any particular health effects. But obviously, if I were doing something that was more physical and in one of those sectors, then it could. So, I can definitely resonate with that because it's my experience for sure.
I think also, so much emphasis gets behind to the person, the operative who's doing the task, and if he makes a poor decision. And I think what I highlight in the presentation is how this escalates. It can escalate from the manager in the office having a really bad day, who talks to his supervisor in a way, I've got enough on my plate today, sort it out yourself. So could that affect the way she would speak to her operative? And I think we need to look more closer at how we're all involved in this, everybody. How you communicate with people in the morning, how you say good morning to somebody, it all has an effect. So if I've had a bad day, I've arrived on site, and today I feel like my supervisor's not there to help, my manager's not there to help, am I then even more likely when it comes to making them decisions to think, oh, I'm going to do it anyway? Or if I've got, I think that's the area we've moved into. It's like we've concentrated so much on behaviour of the individual, but that behaviour is influenced by so many aspects. And I think that's why well-being, for me, again, banging the drum, it encompasses everything. We talk about safety and production, the rules, the equipment, the RAMs, everything we've got, all form a part of the layer of protection. But for me, it's this well-being, I think, just sits around absolutely everything. You mentioned,
go on.
Sorry, you mentioned yourself, Christian. You're not on the cold face doing the work, but having a bad day or a bad night's sleep can affect the way you perform in the morning.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It makes me think because I was thankfully nowhere near as seriously injured as you, but I was run over by a car that came around a corner, was going too fast, lost control, and came up on the pavement and ploughed into me back in 2012. And obviously there's an error, there's a human error there because the driver of that car, did something wrong. But you're right that you think, well, what was happening in that person's life, and what were all the things that contributed to the feeling of I've got to. We think the lady was accelerating through a red light. Why was she rushing? Why was she late? Was she under stress? There's all these things that contribute to it, and she didn't set out that day to, deliberately go up on the curb and plow into somebody and run them over, obviously. But all these things are affecting outcomes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Abbi, just from your perspective, you've obviously taken on. Your dad mentioned some of the work he's doing with Tim now, so you've taken on and stepped up to running the Proud to Be Safe business. How are you finding that, and how are you balancing the kind of, I suppose, weight of responsibility of, continuing your dad's legacy with, your ideas for the future and where you want to take things? And interested to chat a bit about that.
Yeah, and I'm just, I say it all the time when I put posts out, like how humbled and like grateful I am to actually this is my job. Like, because I worked for a bank, and then things were getting busier for Dad, and we were struggling. He was like, "Can you just come and help me with some admin, like one day a week?" And that's sort of how it started. And obviously, then I saw him in action, and then sort of was listening to the feedback, watching the reactions in the room, and I was thinking, I need to help this. This is what I want to do. So, and then that just grew from there. I left my job and worked full time, and then yeah, it was just me and Dad for a while, and then we started to sort of meet other speakers, so we have like quite a varied team now. But again, they're all amazing. How they all individually go out and talk about what they talk about. Every time I listen to them, I'm just in awe of everyone. So for me, as sitting at my desk, listening to feedback and sending them out, and even not just the company's feedback, but we get individual messages on our social medias and emails from how they've taken what they've listened to and how they're going to apply it to their lives. Like for me, it's what it motivates me every day. It's amazing. So for me, just continue helping these guys get their message out and stop it from, I know I say it all the time, but stop any other family going through what we have or what our other speakers' families have.
And if you're getting that feedback, that's really fantastic, because that's very motivational for you, isn't it? Do you get much feedback about this, or maybe it's something you could think about and just give your perspective on, as to why sort of these personal stories, which is what your team are going and talking about, are more effective than maybe the kind of traditional ways of training safety, shall we say?
I think it's just because they can relate. I mean, everyone that goes to start, they're not rehearsed. Obviously, they have a standard talk, but each time they talk about different things, and it's very raw. When they all talk, you can tell it's genuine. It's a lived experience, and there's none of our speakers talk with no emotion either. So, I mean, I cry at most things, to be honest, but every time I go watch any of them, I'm brought to tears, and I think people sitting there, they will relate to some part of it, whether it be the actual individual. Dad touches on hobbies and stuff, so people might think, I'm not bothered if I don't have to work, but then they might play rugby or go to the football and think, oh my God, I'd be bothered about that. Or like I say, when I speak or Sean speaks, seeing the different angle of how it affects friends and family, I think it's just it's having empathy, isn't it? Putting themselves in that position rather than, I mean, statistics. I know I've sat in events before, and me, even the profession I'm in, some people start talking, I'm 20 minutes in, I can feel my eyes going, and I think, I'm going to fall asleep.
Yeah.
And because I think.
You must have been to lots of my talks then.
No. But no, I just think it's just a different. We always say this as well, we're not the only answer. It's not the only thing you can do. It's just a great tool to hit home those procedures and plans that are in place, really.
I'll add to that as well. I think when I first started, I was really busy, especially in the construction industry. I'd be out 4-5 days a week, doing 3 or 4 presentations per day. It was literally getting lads off the site in the canteen, do a presentation, they sign a sheet, take a box, and that's all it was. And it took me a long time to understand that. But what we do now is that, look, this is not the answer. Without, it's not. These motivational talks, inspirational talks aren't the answer, but they're a bloody good tool. And I think if you're if you're starting out with a new some ideas, or word programs, or these events that people put on, but there's nothing better starting it to get people really, really engaged. There's nothing better. But then the flip side is, how long does that last for? Being how long does it last? If that's all you are going to do is a safety talk once a year, and we had clients in the past who did that every year, just get us booked in for another speaker, and they really think that is the answer, and that's the only thing they can do. They have to, and these, for me, realizing there is no one answer. People have searched for this one big thing. Within the industry, all the different factions that seem to pop up around safety, all claim to be the answer. They're not. No one's got the answer. It's another tool, and I think it's what we've done now is, with the team they've got and the direction we can go with the presentations, is always the answer to the question. So what's next? So what else? I think what Abbi's built now within Proudly Safe, and if things get to a level, we need to change the culture in the business. Well, Abbi's doing things now, doing whole day events, conferences, and also obviously working with Tim, you've got the expertise, and so how do you change the company's culture? So we've sort of got, I hate that term. We haven't got the answer, but I think we've got a great arsenal of things we can do. From culture surveys to inspirational talks on health, safety, and well-being. Now, what Abby's moved into organising an event. It's just, I think we're trying to give a client more the answers they need than just those loads of speakers. Use one of those. It's like a whole array of things that Abby's got, from DVD, for a lot. It's a whole spectrum of things and it's working. That's why we're so busy. It's just we know it's working. So it's really exciting times.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, that's good. And I fully agree about the the data and the statistics, and it's about finding a balance, isn't it? Because I think it's kind of, I hesitate to use the word easy, but it's easy to get an emotive response if you've got a really powerful story like what you guys have. You can get that emotive response, but as you say, that can only take you so far, and then it's then about, okay, where do we go from here? And I think you then have to think about, certain audiences are going to resonate more with some of the facts and figures, and certain audiences are going to resonate more with the stories.
People have different.
Everybody is different. Everyone's got a different personality. They listen, see things differently to everybody else. That's just how we are as a group of humans. And it's helped us. I think me and Abby personally, we've used Mark Wilkinson today, we understand our own personalities.
Yeah.
It also led me down to think about my personality at the time of my accident may have influenced the choice I was making. I was one of these people that wanted to help people. It's my nature. So when someone said to me, "Can you just?" my instinct was, "Yeah, of course I can." My instinct would have been, "Actually, I can help you, but what am I supposed to be doing?" Just by learning that everyone's a different person. We're not all the same. So one set of rules, one set of training or whatever it is, won't affect absolutely everybody. We're all different how we engage with people. So the conversation around communication crops up quite a lot in the presentations. But when you understand we all hear, see and speak completely differently. So sometimes it's a case of making sure the person, when you're giving instructions, has actually understood what you've said. They might have signed the sheet, and signed the equipment off, but actually they say to the mate, "What do you say?" So we've been in this cycle for so long, and people keep, Abby will get a phone call from a client. "Oh, can we have Jason to do a work height presentation?" Which I don't really do anymore. "Oh, we've been fine for a couple of years. Now we had a spade to work height incidents." And we say, "Well, so what have you changed since last time you came in?" "Oh, nothing. You came in last time and it stopped it all." Well, we understand now is, no, the incidents were happening. We just got away with it. So we don't. So I think sometimes a lot of, especially larger companies, get so comfortable looking at their KPIs around accidents and incidents as if that's their safety blanket. "Oh, nothing's happened, everything's fine, stats are low, we'll move on." And then they can't quite understand all of a sudden they've got a spate to work at height or eye incidents or something like that. And I think, that's the message we're trying to get through, that, we can't just rely on stats and figures. Where my bit, for my limited knowledge of having qualifications, is that the way I'm feeling that day, the way I've come to work, if I've slept properly, ate properly, the way I've interacted with my supervisor in that morning brief will influence what I do for the rest of the day. And all the safety stats, safety rules, safety equipment, safety videos, it isn't really going to change the way I feel in that day. So I can go sit in an hour's presentation, but if I've come to work that morning in such a bad place, I'm again going from feedback we get. One of the best or most alarming ones I say we get is when somebody says to me after a presentation, "I need to speak to somebody because I'm new for an accident. I know I'm a liability at work." In that way, you've changed somebody's life. You never know what the consequences was. He's done something different. So when we want to see how many people are we affecting, well, that guy then will go and speak to his supervisor, does different tasks, get home safe to his family. Their life is completely different, and we can't measure that. Christian. That's unmeasurable.
Yeah,
So
can't measure prevention. Yeah.
no, you can't. So but it seems so much emphasis gets put on thing around safety. I think the reason being we can measure safety. We can measure safety, so we measure safety. How do we measure having a good day at work? It's not about safety, is it? It's about production. It's about quality. And if I have a better day at work, I'm feeling happier, my production's better, my quality is better, and my safety will be better by default because I'm in a good place. So when I see that training lead on the floor, I'm more likely to go and tidy it up and then tell someone else about the training lead. Instead, at the end of the shift or end of the month, putting that as one of my observations for a month. Or 2 weeks ago, I saw a training lead on the floor. You did nothing about it. So I think the whole thing needs to spin on its axis. And I think sometimes the people who've been in safety for so long and know safety inside out, are they the ones who are more sort of reluctant to embrace how well-being can influence safety? Because they don't quite understand what it is. So because there's no sort of currently not a lot of evidence based around how well-being affects people, we choose to ignore it. And I think it can be a quite dangerous thing. I bang the drum all the time. I read articles, I read people who are very, very learned who form the case around well-being's nothing to do with safety, and they do a really, really good argument. But I know from personal experience that my well-being was the main contributory factor why I chose to work unsafe. My well-being was the reason that my kids grew up the way they did, and all to do with the choice I made. So is it I need to be proved right? I've got all the qualifications to be proved right. I know what I'm talking about. I actually think, you know what? Maybe there is something in this. Just being nice to people in the morning, having a nice conversation with somebody could change their whole day. Change their whole day. The way they interact with the work colleagues, the way you're going from work, do they go to the pub or do they go straight home? Do they take the kids to a park on a Saturday or go to a pub on a Saturday because they're in a bad mood because they had a bad week? And I think that's why we champion so much. And I think all our speakers now, or all Abbi speakers, should I say, who's joined Abbi, came with a safety story, and yet they're all now approaching the well-being piece, how it affected their choices. And that's not somewhere telling them to say, by the way. It's just their natural progression is actually there's something in this that it wasn't, like I say, it's not the main, not necessarily the only reason, but it definitely played a contributing factor why people are making bad choices.
Yeah. Is that borne out in your conversations, Abbi, with clients? And is that kind of, do you feel that clients are seeing that more and more now as you guys and others, are talking more about this?
Yeah, definitely. And I think quite a lot of our clients that we've worked with for many years get it. Some still see it as two separate things. So they'll come to us just, have you got a wellbeing sleep? They don't. But then, I mean, your session, Dad, really links it all, because you even say, if I was who I am today, I wouldn't have had the accident. I wouldn't have done that on that day. But yeah, a lot of our clients do get it. And I think following on from some of the workshops that you do as well around what sort you can improve and what are better, it can be something just as simple as you talk about it before, like better coffee on site that improves the whole morale. It doesn't have to be a massive thing, but yeah, it's a huge area that I think ties in. It's well-being, health and safety. I think if you get that right, everything else just follows in.
Follows on from there. Yeah, so is that an area that you're going to continue focusing on then, in terms of how you're developing your product and service offering?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, the speakers that we've got now, so the health, safety, and wellbeing speakers will continue to grow. I mean, we're not an agency, so we don't just take, as you can imagine, but we've represented people before and it hasn't quite worked out, and it's nothing against them. They're great speakers, but it has to tie in quite with our, how word it properly, but sort of our values and how we work as a business. It has to fit properly. But also for the clients, when we're sending people out, we know it's going to land right. So yeah, I'm hoping we've got some inspirational speakers as well that don't talk on topics around health and safety, but they're more resilience, or sort of coming back from like building themselves back up after a traumatic event and things like that. But we've met these people along the way at conferences or events that we've had a speaker at. So yeah, personally, they're all absolutely brilliant. And to be able to help, so when we've done these roadshows for companies before, they've sort of come to us and said, we've sort of done ad hoc days, but we can actually, we have the ability and the services and the team to actually build a whole day without the client having to worry about it. So they can come and say, I know we're having a leadership day or a team building day or a culture day, and we can actually build them a whole day of learning, not just a 1 hour talk from somebody. It's a whole day of around, and it all ties in as well. So yeah, that's my vision, which is taking off. I've started it now, and I thought it was going to take a while to build, but already we've got clients like, yes, do this. So it's, yeah, I'm super excited for that and how that's going to, eventually take off. Really interesting. Just a completely different area for me to focus on as well. That it's not just a full from height speaker or. And again, I want to say, when people get in touch, they quite often will get in touch and say, we want a speaker, and they don't actually know what they want. Then actually, after a phone call or a conversation, they end up with something completely different. So it's a great job for me. I enjoy it.
That's great, and it sounds like things are progressing really well. Jason, you've obviously spoken about the well-being element and how important that is from your own lived experience. How far would you say that you've seen kind of us as a big whole world out there improve in this area over the last, or say since you started doing your talks? How far have we gone, and sort of how far have we still got to go before we kind of crack that nut, do you think?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a great example, Rick. So in 2018, when me and Tim decided to join forces, we couldn't just carry on doing the safety bit, but we sort of joined forces to try and highlight this link between well-being and safety. It was all part of what we decided what we was going to do. And I must admit, the first couple of years, people were saying to Abbi, no, don't want that. Just have to safety talk. The well-being, we do well-being over here somewhere. And then COVID came along, and it did what it did to society. However, what I believe is it then gave this opportunity where well-being became recognised in everything. And I think if you want for a positive about the COVID experience, it was definitely that. It brought the whole thing around well-being into the arena, and people started connecting the dots. So I kind of doing a presentation, I think for 2019 for a client, and I brought this well-being element in. It's safe. It's about an accident, what caused my accident, and then how I started to turn my life around. And I remember a guy saying to me, he was a safety director of a company, and he said, I've been in this game for 25 years, and I've never ever joined the dots between well-being and safety. So thank you. And I think that was, I think, we've got a long way to go, obviously. We're still quite a bit of resistance around this whole thing around well-being. I think that needs to go first. It's not saying well-being is the only thing. Get people right, they'll just work safe. No, it's not that. All the things around safety, which we are excellent at in the UK, in Great Britain. I think something we lead the world, don't we? In some of the things we do. That's why we get asked to go around the world presenting, because they want to know what we do. We're really good at it. Well, I think what's I've noticed on the trips, abroad, especially to the Middle East, is how they've recognised how well-being plays a factor in all these things as well. Not just safety, but production and quality. And they want to be the best at it. And I think we are ahead at the moment. If we just sit back and don't do much more with it around this thing about well-being and safety, we will get left behind, because there's other parts of the world I've recognised that I'll be a more profitable worker coming to work if I'm in a good place. I'll be a safer worker. Production will be better. Ideas will be better. I mean, one personal thing I've noticed since I've been on my own well-being journey, I've improved massively over the last 6 years, is my clarity of thinking. It's completely changed. I have ideas all the time. We come up with different strategies, and I think for me, realising I'm a different person because I eat well, I sleep well, I look after myself, look after my diet. I'm a completely different person. I think Abby will probably say I'm a better dad as well, I'm a better granddad, because on a weekend now I don't drink, so I'm not hungover. So Abby says, "Are we going to so and so today, Dad?" Yeah, of course I'll go. So all those things slowly knock on, don't they, onto the next one. So yeah, I'm super excited where we're going with this. And then I've developed another talk, which I've done occasionally, all around facing your fears. And people say, "Oh no, do safety talk, because you're talking about facing your fears." But by the end of it, you actually realise if I'm looking after myself and my internal battery is full of energy and full of, I'm going to work better, I'm going to work safer. So do we just focus on safety, or do we focus on the bigger picture? So that's my goal going forward, that I focus more on the bigger picture than just safety. And I think it's just where it's gone. It's where it's gone. And you can't just keep saying, if you're unsure, speak up. Because we know by experience, I was in a bad place. I chose not to speak up just to get the job done so I could get home or go down the pub. And when people say, they do it all the time, I ask people on site, direct in faces, is this something you do? And say yes. So we can keep going on this thing. We're getting better, things are changing. But while we've got workers on site today who are making those decisions today and getting away with it, because 990 times out of 1,000, you'll take a shortcut and it'll work and you'll get away with it and you'll finish a little bit early and the client's happy. So that just goes on and on until there's been an accident. Then they refocus, they have the campaign. 3 years down the line, they're back doing exactly the same thing before. So that's it. And that's where the old cultural piece comes in, doesn't it? You get people, get an individual who's man at the company, who takes out on the company, is a slow worker, takes a few shortcuts. But unfortunately, that spreads, and all of a sudden you've got 20 workers, 30 workers, 40 workers, the whole workforce. And then that becomes a culture. Then new people join that company, and not until very long, they're back to doing things they did before. So, yeah. So me personally, I'll keep on this crusade of making companies aware how well-being plays such an important part in their whole business.
Good stuff. I'm with you on that one. Well, look, guys, really enjoyed speaking. If people have been inspired by that and want to go on that journey, Abby, maybe you could close by explaining kind of how people can get in touch, how they can work with you, what's the best way of finding information and all that kind of good stuff.
I mean, everything's on the website, everything we offer, all the links to each of the speakers, and there's videos of them sort of doing an intro to their talk, so you can get a real sense of how they present. And then on there's also more information about the days that we have run. And I mean, we have our generic things there, but we're very flexible with clients. So we build things all the time based on what they need and want. So, I mean, email me, of course, visit the website, it's all on there. But whenever I get the email anyway, I always set up a call, because I feel like you get more out of a call, what they actually want and what their vision is. So,
Good stuff. And I guess follow on LinkedIn and stuff as well. So we'll pop your LinkedIn's profiles in the show notes as well. And if people aren't following you already, which they probably are, but if they're not, then they can do that too. Well, thank you very much, guys. Really enjoyed it. Thanks for sharing your experiences and how that's kind of driven you on to make this positive change. And hopefully the audience will give you a follow and reach out if they feel you can be of help with that. So thanks very much.
Yeah, thanks, Christian. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on the Safety and Risk Success podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please hit follow and do share on social media. Does anyone you know spring to mind as a great guest, even yourself? If so, please contact us on podcast@slipsafety.co.uk. See you next week for another episode.